of a game tonight between the Mavs and the Clippers. Here's Luka again on the dance floor against Harden. Low clock three. Bullseye! Bullseye! Let him know! Luka Doncic is going to let him know!
He is a show all by himself.
Oh, that energy. That energy.
Yeah, I personally don't think that the Clippers have, especially with Kawhi being hurt, the kind of...
Dončić, 5 to shoot. Against Harden. Dončić lines it up. It goes! He is that guy!
Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Appreciate you joining me for Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video. And if you're listening to the podcast, give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can find it on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast for free. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. The Mavericks win an absolute slugfest in Game 2 of the first round of their Western Conference playoff matchup with the Los Angeles Clippers, 96-93 after the Mavericks overcome a 6-point deficit in the fourth quarter. Luka Doncic with 32 points. You saw the dagger three-pointer that he had to put the Mavericks up by 9, their biggest lead of the game at that point, with a $1:30 left in the fourth quarter. P.J. Washington was massive with 18 points, 10 of which came in the fourth quarter. And, of course, Kyrie Irving pouring in 23 points of his own as the Mavericks were able to get a gutsy win on the road over the Clippers to be able to even up their series at 1 game apiece with the 3-point win, 96-93, in a game that the Mavericks were able to lead with their defense. So much to get to in this game because of how well these two teams were playing defensively going into what will be a huge Game 3 on Friday night when the Mavericks return home to take on the Los Angeles Clippers. The backdrop being, of course, the Clippers winning Game 1 on their home floor on Sunday in a game that they led by as many as 29 points. The Mavericks were able to play much better in the second half of game number 1 to build some momentum going into game number 2. They lost game 1, of course, by 12, but the question was going to be, would Kawhi Leonard make his first appearance in this series against the Dallas Mavericks? And that he did, as he returned to the lineup after having not played since March the 31st, and in a lot of ways really wasn't effective. Yes, defensively was able to do some nice things with a few steals in the game. In fact, Kawhi Leonard for the game had 4 steals for the Los Angeles Clippers, but really didn't have a lot of legs in his jump shot, of course, dealing with that inflammation in his right knee. You saw even Luka Doncic being able to put the clamps on him down there in the post as well, being able to do some things defensively really well against Kawhi Leonard. Leonard finished the game with 15 points, going 7 of 17 from the field, but definitely wasn't the same. He tried to get some things going early on in that third quarter to get a little bit more aggressive offensively, but you could tell he was kind of a shell of himself as he continues to work his way back into the lineup for the Clippers. But the Clippers got their guy back, but it wasn't enough in this game because the Mavericks defensively did the job and set the tone from the outset of the game, especially in the first quarter, where they were able to get 5 blocks in the first quarter alone. And you could tell that the Mavericks were playing with a much more sense of urgency in this game because they knew that they had to have game number 2. We talked about it in our previous episodes, the idea that the Mavericks could not come back to Dallas down 0-2, knowing the prospect of when Kawhi Leonard possibly could come back for the Clippers. He made his return in game number 2, but the Mavericks had 5 blocks in the first quarter. Daniel Gafford, who wound up dealing with a sore back, was not really able to play in the second half, but at the same time was able to come back for a little bit. But for the Mavericks, they got off to a much better start as far as this game was concerned. You look at what they were able to do going into the first quarter, as there was a lot to get to in this game. As I mentioned, both teams struggled for offense in that first quarter. In fact, the Mavericks and the Clippers only combined for 17 points midway through the first period. The Clippers saw the Mavericks go on a 9-3 run to take an 18-11 lead after a Luka Doncic, his second three-pointer with 3.5 minutes left in the first. But the Mavericks were able to lead 23-15 with a minute and a half left in that first quarter. Again, the defense is what led the day for the Mavericks. They had 5 block shots, holding the Clippers to just 5 of 20 from the field in that first quarter, 1 of 4 from downtown. Luka led the way with 12 points as he was able to knock down a nice little jumper over Terrence Mann, drilling a three-pointer that had the Mavs up by 5. Of course, Dončić was able to get to 12 points with a nice little bank shot on the left side as well. Maxi Kleber came up big in this game. He had a huge offensive rebound after Kyrie Irving missed 1 of 2 free throws to able to get the ball back to Kyrie, where he was able to ice it away for the Mavericks to give them what was a 6-point lead before that buzzer beater by Paul George that didn't necessarily matter, obviously, as the Mavericks won 96-93. Maxi Kleber came up huge in this game. He had a big three-pointer in that first quarter as well. But the biggest thing for me was the Mavericks, from a physicality standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, came into this game much more focused and ready to play this game. They were doing the best that they could to force tough mid-range jumpers for the Los Angeles Clippers to where they weren't able to really get things going offensively throughout the course of this game. So just a terrific, massive defensive effort by the Dallas Mavericks, especially setting the tone in that first quarter, particularly Derrick Jones Jr., who I thought had a fantastic game. You look at what he did in the first quarter, had a block shot. Luka Doncic also had a block shot as well in that first quarter. And for Luka and Kyrie to set the tone and participate on the defensive end, where I felt like the two of them took it real personal after what happened in game number 1, especially Luka Doncic, who the Clippers were hunting in those matchups, punishing him on switches when he was not able to deal with the screens that they were setting on him, and James Harden punishing him over and over, whether it be for step-back threes or driving to the basket and finding open teammates. Luka Doncic took the onus on himself to be much better defensively in game number 2. Much more on this episode of Inside the Mavs as the Mavericks get a huge road win in game 2 of their Western Conference first-round matchup with the Los Angeles Clippers, and how they were able to get it done, especially in the second half, thanks to P.J. Washington's massive night. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Again, appreciate you hanging out with us through that quick break, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast in Aura. Mavericks get a huge win, 96-93 on the road in game number 2 of their first-round series against the Los Angeles Clippers to even up their series at 1 game apiece. The Mavericks were able to use their defense to really stifle the Clippers offensively throughout the course of this game, making things extremely difficult on them throughout the course of the basketball game. Mavericks were up by 4 to start that second quarter. The Clippers took a brief lead at 26-25 after a Norman Powell three-pointer 2.5 minutes into the period, but the Mavericks responded with a 6-0 run to regain the lead at 31-26 after Luka Doncic's bucket with just over 8 minutes left in that second quarter. The Mavericks were able to increase the lead to 7 under 6 minutes left after a Kyrie Irving three-pointer, but the Clippers outscored, the Mavericks 11-8 as the Mavericks over the last 5 minutes of that second quarter, but the Mavericks led 45-41 going into halftime. Luka and Kyrie combining of 13 of the Mavericks' 22 points. Again, defensively, an absolute slugfest where both teams physical. Yes, the officiating left some to be desired, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But Kyrie Irving hitting a three-pointer on the right wing put the Mavs up by 7 at 37-30 with 6.5 minutes left in that second quarter. Again, Kyrie Irving with another left-hand floater. A beautiful move to his left to be able to finish with a tough lefty floater in the middle of the lane. They had the Mavericks up by 4 with 4:49 left in that second quarter. But James Harden was able to get things going a little bit for the Los Angeles Clippers. You look at that second quarter, he had 9 points going 4 of 7 from the field, but really couldn't do anything from deep as far as the three-point line was concerned. Clippers shot just 1 of 9 from the three-point line and 10 of 24 overall in that second quarter. And that was one thing that I said during the pregame show, that the Mavericks are going to have to do much better than they did in game 1, where the Clippers went 18 of 36 from 3, 50% in game number 1. This is a team in the Clippers that was the 6th best shooting percentage from the three-point line during the regular season, shooting over 38% from the three-point line as a team. They showed that strength in game number 1. That didn't happen in game 2. The rotations for the Mavericks was much better. The defensive communication, much better. Closing out on shooters. PJ Washington with his activity. Kyrie Irving with his activity in this game, which we'll continue to get to as the show goes on. Everyone pitching in on the defensive end, and the Mavericks playing with a sense of desperation, knowing they couldn't come back to Dallas down 0-2, showed that throughout the entirety of the game as they were able to really get after the Clippers defensively. So they led by 4 going into the second half. They were able to outscore the Clippers 10-7 in that first 4 minutes of opening up the second half. They got a couple of steals that was able to lead to some easy buckets for them as they got up by 7 at 55-48. The Clippers, though, it was a big set of runs in that third quarter as the Mavericks outscored the Clippers 10-7 to begin the period. They got up by 7. Clippers, though, responded with a 7-0 run to tie the game at 55 midway through the third. Mavericks then responded with 2 huge threes from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving that got them back up 61-55 with 5 minutes left in that third. But then the Clippers responded again with a 7-0 run, capped off by 2 Paul George free throws with 3 minutes left. The Mavericks went cold, though, as they went over 3 minutes without a basket. But again, this is where the others for the Mavericks were able to make the Clippers pay, especially as the game got deeper and deeper into the third and obviously into the fourth quarters, led by P.J. Washington. P.J. Washington had a big basket in this game. He was able to help the Mavericks regain the lead when he was able to get the floater for them that got them back up 63-62. And then for me, the turning point of the game for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the Mavericks were able to get a layup from Luka Doncic that had them that tied the game at 65. And Luka Doncic, who was not filling the referees, Mark Davis and his crew, not necessarily the favorites of the Dallas Mavericks in game number 2, got a technical foul from Davis that allowed the Clippers to hit a free throw that allowed them to end the third quarter up 66-65. But as Jason Kidd talked about it after the game, that lit a fire under Luka Doncic because he came out in the fourth quarter and absolutely was smoking and really helping the Mavericks be able to win this game. But for me, that was the turning point. I had a lot of folks jumping in my mentions on Twitter saying, Kevin, what the hell are you talking about? Luka should have had the foul call there. And I said, look, I understand that Luka should have gotten the foul call there. He was definitely hit. It should have been an and one opportunity for him to go to the free throw line, which was a huge thing in this game as well, because early on in the first half, the Mavericks were not doing themselves any favors from the free throw line. They could have been up double digits if they had been any better from the free throw line in the first half, something to keep a watch on going into games 3 and 4 at the American Airlines Center. But obviously for Luka Doncic in that moment, not having gotten several foul calls in the game. You saw where the Clippers got some questionable calls to go their way, including James Harden, who was hunting fouls on a three-point shot attempt where he was able to get a foul call on Josh Green. Again, the officiating left a lot to be desired given some of the calls that were made, some that were not made, and some of the calls that were made that should not have been, especially for the Clippers in their favor. And for Luka to not get that foul call, it sent him over the top, and he got a technical foul. Even with the ability that Luka Doncic has in that moment, you've got to keep your composure there no matter how much the referees have been horrible in the game, no matter what the referees have not been able to call in terms of calls that you're looking for. Doncic cannot get a technical foul in that particular moment. But for him, we know, and we've seen it time and time again throughout his 6-year career, technical fouls can fire him up, and that's exactly what that did for him. And for me, that was the turning point of the game because he decided that at that moment, the fire had been lit, obviously for him and his teammates who have been going throughout the course of a bloodbath of a basketball game to really be able to use that to be able to help them out. By the way, Kyrie Irving had an incredible bounce pass in midair to hit PJ Washington in the corner on the left corner for a three-pointer. One of the plays of the playoffs so far that Kyrie Irving was able to have. He got the steal on one end. He was able to get a dunk on the other end. Again, another example. That's my favorite example of what Kyrie Irving did from a defensive standpoint, competing on that end of the floor. He was able to help get the Mavericks up by 7 at 55-48 with just under 8 minutes left in that third quarter. He picks James Harden's pocket on one end and finishes with the dunk on the other end. Those are the types of things that you saw from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. We mentioned Luka Doncic in terms of the post defense he was playing on Kawhi Leonard, getting after loose balls. They set the tone for the Mavericks defensively throughout the course of that game. But that was my favorite example from Kyrie Irving, getting that steal on James Harden and then being able to finish on the other end. But then we go into the fourth quarter. Mavericks down by 1 to begin that fourth quarter. Obviously, we talked about Luka Doncic and what happened in terms of getting that technical foul that really fired him up. And then you go into the fourth quarter. Clippers open up that fourth period on a 7-2 run to increase their lead to 6. Now they're up 73-67 at that particular point. That is when the Mavericks go on what was a 14-0 run to turn what was a 6-point deficit into an 8-point lead with 5 minutes left in the game. And it was led by Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and PJ Washington. PJ Washington tied the game at 73 with his three-pointer in the right corner off of Maxi Kleber assist, who I thought played well in this game. We talked about the big offensive rebound that he had to be able to get the ball to Kyrie Irving to seal the game, to get them up by 6 with 7 seconds left after Kyrie Irving knocked down a couple of free throws. But Maxi Kleber with his passing, his activity, he hit a couple of big threes in this game, including one in the fourth quarter where the Clippers had pulled the game within 3 after an Ivica Zubac basket. But at the same time, Kleber buried that three-pointer, had the Mavs up by 6, 87-81, with just over 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. This is what I was talking about when it came to the others for the Mavericks, whether it was PJ Washington knocking down threes, Derrick Jones Jr. with his defense. You saw throughout the course of the game his activity, especially that huge block that he had at the end of the first quarter, really continuing to put forward that defensive effort. Maxi Kleber hitting timely shots as well, where the Mavericks, they kept a short rotation in this game, in game number 2, and you're kind of getting an idea now of what this rotation is going to look like going forward. Tim Hardaway Jr. had an ankle sprain. Not sure what his availability will look like for the remainder of this series. He was not able to return after he thought he was fouled on an attempt, a three-point attempt, where he didn't get the foul call, where Paul George was able to get into his body. And next thing you know, he knocks Tim Hardaway Jr. down, and Hardaway has a sprained ankle and wasn't able to return to the game. But the others, as I mentioned, particularly PJ Washington, with 10 of his 18 points in that fourth quarter. You saw what the Mavericks were able to do in devastatingly hitting three-pointers in that fourth quarter, going 6 of 9 from deep. They weren't able to shoot the ball well from three in game number one, but they hit timely shots in game number two, 6 of 9 from the field. 6 of 9 from downtown, 8 of 16 overall from the field, shooting 50% overall from the field. And PJ Washington, 10 of his 18 points in that fourth quarter, knocking down 2 3-pointers as well. That is what is needed for the rest of this series from Washington. Not just the defense that he played, which was absolutely spectacular, had a couple of block shots in the game as well. The length and the athleticism that he provides on the defensive end. Again, I thought the rotations for the Mavericks was simply incredible. Getting out to shooters, forcing tough mid-range jump shots, not allowing the Clippers to be able to break them down in terms of isolation and getting off the dribble. And I thought did a much better job of that, of keeping the Clippers in front of them throughout the course of the game. But Luka Doncic was able to hit a pull-up transition three that drilled that three-pointer that had the Mavericks up by 3 at 76-73 with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Then Kyrie Irving on the very next possession hit a three-pointer as well, back-to-back threes. It was 3 straight threes, honestly, with Washington, Dončić, and then Irving knocking down successive threes to get the Mavericks up 79-73 with just over 6 minutes left in the game in the fourth quarter. Then Washington hit another one. They had them up by 8 at 84-76. So again, the timely shot making from the Mavericks from three, coupled with their incredible defensive effort, and then Luka Doncic, as you heard at the beginning of the show, burying that step-back three-pointer to have the Mavericks up by 9, which gave them their biggest lead of the game at that time at 90-81 with a minute 26 left in the game. And look, there's a couple of moments, especially in that fourth quarter, that you will look back and you think the Mavericks were able to pull out this game because of those moments. Now, they tried to have some mental lapses. They had a breakdown that allowed James Harden to knock down a three, and then another mental lapse that allowed Kawhi Leonard to get to the basket to get a layup that cut the lead to 3 for the Mavericks. But Jason Kidd challenged the play where there was initially a foul called on Kyrie Irving. They challenged that play. They win the challenge, so now it erases a potential extra point for the Clippers, because if Kawhi Leonard makes that free throw, we're talking about a 2-point game with 20 and a half seconds left and not a 3-point game as it was. So really good job by Jason Kidd and his coaching staff recognizing and trusting his players to be able to have that challenge, understanding time, score, and situation with the timeout situation that he had to be able to use the challenge. They win it, and then they're able to get the ball back without any further damage after the mental lapse of allowing Kawhi Leonard to get to the basket. And then Luka Doncic with an incredible bounce pass to get the ball to Kyrie Irving, to get the ball and advance the ball onto the Maverick side of the floor to eventually where Kyrie Irving gets fouled. He makes 1 of 2 free throws. Maxi Kleber gets a huge offensive rebound, again, underscoring the effort from everyone else in this game to be able to win. He gets a huge offensive rebound, gets the ball back to Kyrie Irving. Irving makes both free throws. That gave him a 6-point lead with 7 seconds left. As I mentioned, Paul George hit that three-pointer at the buzzer. It didn't matter as the Mavericks were able to win by 3. But again, those moments, whether it was the coaching staff making the right decision to challenge that play at the end, Luka Doncic making a crucial pass to be able to get the ball to Kyrie Irving to advance the ball onto the Maverick side of the floor, whether it was PJ Washington's timeliness with his 3-point shooting, Luka Doncic the same, Kyrie Irving. You're getting my drift here, and the point that I'm making is it took a total collective team effort for this Mavericks team to get this win, a gutsy one at that, because they absolutely had to have it. You saw the aggressiveness at which the Clippers were playing Luka Doncic, blitzing him, trying to get the ball out of his hands. They did a lot of the same with Kyrie Irving and Luka in game number 1, but the Mavericks handled the pressure much better as the game went on and were able to get to their spots, particularly from the three-point line, where the Mavericks have won games in a variety of ways this season, especially during the second half of the year. But make no mistake about it, the defense is for real, and you saw that in game number 2. You saw it much better in the second half of game number 1, and I'm proud that this team was able to use what they did in game number 1 in the second half where they shot the ball much better from three and obviously much better overall from the field where they shot over 50% from the field in the second half and carried that intensity and focus over into game number 2, even with the return of Kawhi Leonard, and they were not fazed by the moment. And now you're seeing PJ Washington not be afraid of the moment, being able to take charge and knock down huge buckets to be able to help this team win, where I thought in game number 1, and Jason Kidd talked about it during the pregame show, which is maybe a little bit of fatigue, or excuse me, a little bit of rust and a little bit of deer in the headlight moments for some of these young players that are playing in these playoff situations for the very first time. But for Washington, he responded extremely well in pressure situations. And when you've got Luka and you've got Kyrie to lean on, they were able to help shepherd this team to a huge, huge, huge win in game number 2 of this first round matchup, because now they get to come home on Friday with confidence, now that you know that you can win a game in their building with Kawhi Leonard. It'll be interesting to see how Kawhi Leonard responds in terms of not having played since the end of March, what that knee will look like going into game 3. The Mavericks and their injury situation, Daniel Gafford dealing with a sore back, was not able to really play in the second half. I mentioned Tim Hardaway Jr. He's got an ankle sprain. What will his availability look like? Josh Green, you saw in terms of the game as well, is he was able to play throughout the course of the game. Rotations, one of the hallmarks of this game was, as physical of a game this was, Jason Kidd was rotating his guys in and out like crazy to try to keep them as fresh as possible throughout the course of this game. And I thought really managed the game well. As poorly as I thought he coached in game 1, I thought Jason Kidd managed game 2 much, much better with the rotation that he had, some of the decisions that he made, particularly in the fourth quarter, to be able to have that challenge to really help his team, but also continuing to stay with the guys that were playing well and giving them opportunities to work through those things. And again, this team didn't panic in the fourth quarter. They got down by 6. Things really could have taken a real turn, and I thought that they were going to after Luka Doncic had picked up the technical foul to allow the Clippers to take that 1-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and the Clippers immediately building on that to be able to take that 6-point lead. The Mavericks didn't panic, and they were able to keep their poise down the stretch, where, of course, the Mavericks this season, 23-9 in clutch games, the best in the NBA this season, and they proved once again that medal that they have proven during the regular season could be utilized in the postseason. And this win was a confidence-boosting win for not only for those young players, but also now setting the tone for the rest of the series that they could win a game on the road, and they earned the split that they needed to get in order to go back to Dallas to set themselves up with an opportunity to really get this home crowd into it on Friday night, which will be rocking at the AAC, ready to welcome this team home and to push them to hopefully be able to hold serve on their home floor in games 3 and 4, where you've got the 7 o'clock tip time on Friday night. You've got the 2:30 start time on Sunday. Those crowds should be into it, and into it well, for the Mavericks to have an opportunity to be able to take hopefully a 3-1 lead. But it's not going to be easy. The Clippers are a talented team, a team that can score and can shoot. But the defense for the Mavericks was absolutely sensational in this game. You look at the numbers real quick when it comes to the defensive numbers that the Mavericks were able to utilize. Clippers shot 26% from 3, 36% overall from the field. Mavericks in this game had 8 steals, 7 blocks in this game, and forced the issue getting into passing lanes, not making things easy for the Clippers offensively. And I thought was absolutely sensational in their effort, their rotations, their intensity, their focus in this game, and they were able to channel it, not getting panicked in the moments where they could have, but sticking to what they do best. And they earned themselves this win in game number 2. Extremely tough, gutsy performance from this team, a team that's proving once again that they've got the goods to get it done when they need to in the clutch. And they proved it one more time, this time in the postseason, after bouncing back from a dreadful performance in game number 1 to overcome the return of Kawhi Leonard, but more importantly, give themselves confidence that they are now firmly in this series after getting the win in game number 2. So the Mavericks get it done on the home floor of the Los Angeles Clippers, 96-93. Massive win. Huge shout outs to PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., Luka and Kyrie setting the tone on the defensive end with their hustle and their energy and their commitment to that end of the floor, and it permeating down to the rest of the team. And Jason Kidd, yes, with some big decisions that allowed the Mavericks to be able to win this game as well. Total team effort as they even up their series at 1 game apiece as the series comes back now to Dallas for games 3 and 4 on Friday and Sunday. We'll have plenty of coverage throughout the rest of the week. Have another podcast dropping on Wednesday as well to just break down even further how this game was able to get won by the Mavericks. So we'll have plenty here on Inside the Mavs with my partner Grant Afseth of Mavs Sports Illustrated. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thank you for joining me here on Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. Like and comment on the video if you're watching this. I'm on YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. Also, download and subscribe to Inside the Mavs on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports, and we'll talk to you next time on Inside the Mavs. We'll talk to you later. Peace.